All right, welcome everyone. This is part 10 of my series, The End is Near. As you know, I've laid out a case for the identity of the Antichrist. And here's some more evidence concerning that. The king of the north and the goat that comes from the west. As you know, if you've watched my previous videos, I've become absolutely convinced that the President of the United States is in fact the Antichrist. Back before he went into office, he suggested he could perhaps use military force to acquire the Panama Canal and Greenland, an economic force to annex Canada, threatening to make them the 51st state. Okay. Well, this is from the Club of Rome in 1973, and it has a supposed division of the world into 10 distinctions, which we know there'll be 10 kings of Revelation. So whether this is really it or not, I don't know about that. But notice that it shows the United States as a block, and it contains Canada and Greenland, interestingly. All right. So that would make Mr. Trump, if he were to take Canada and Greenland, the king or the leader of the North, that is, North America. Well, it just so happens that the Antichrist in Daniel chapter 11 is called the king of the north. And he actually will enter the Holy Land or the glorious land. So one day, the United States and its allies will actually invade Israel, though we're claiming to be their friend right now. He'll enter the glorious land, the king of the north. So the king of the north, what continent is called North America? Well, ours, of course. King of the north. Okay? Now, so let's establish he's the king of the north. What else? You remember back in June, the U.S. attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. It was called Operation Midnight Hammer. It's carried out by U.S. B-2 bombers. Okay, how they struck Iran undetected. Okay, so they left from Whitman Air Force Base in Missouri. They went across and attacked the Iranian nuclear facilities, and they flew back. They did all of this without landing. They did not land, okay? They didn't land. Now, first they sent a deceptive force that went the other way across the Pacific. But you'll notice that the attack force came from the west across the Atlantic Ocean and attacked Iran, okay? Now, those B-2 bombers had a toilet, microwave, a snack cooler, and so on. So it was a 37-hour bombing raid going over there and back. Now, how did they do that? Well, they had to refuel in midair. Amazing, right? And it's just amazing. But I want to show you that this is a fulfillment of Scripture. Okay, Daniel 8:4. Daniel said, I saw the ram pushing westward, northward, and southward so that no animal could withstand him. Nor was there any that could deliver from his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. We find out later in Daniel chapter 8 that the ram is Iran or Persia, okay? Verse 5, and as I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from the west across the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Now the goat, we find out later in Daniel chapter 8, is Greece, and the notable horn between his eyes, of course, is Alexander the Great, their first and greatest king. Okay, so you have Iran being attacked by Greece under Alexander the Great. Persia, Iran being attacked and defeated, by the way. Okay, then he came to the ram that had two horns, which were Media and Persia, the two parts of the Persian Empire, which I'd seen stand beside the river, and ran at him with furious power, and I saw him confronting the ram. He's moved with rage against him, attacked the ram, broke his two horns. There was no power in the ram to withstand him, but he cast him down to the ground and trampled him. So the goat tramples the ram. The goat is Greece. The ram is Iran or Persia. Okay, got that? All right, that's what it pictures. Now, let's talk about that. Some prophecies have a dual fulfillment. For example, Isaiah 7:14, Isaiah actually had a child that he would name Emmanuel, but it was also speaking prophetically of the virgin birth of Jesus. So it had a near-term fulfillment and a long-term fulfillment. Okay, this scripture does also. Now, What about the goat with the prominent horn? Well, I said it represents the kingdom of Greece, so we know that, and it's Alexander the Great. He was known for his rapid and expansive conquest. He came out of the west. Alexander the Great came from the west and compared to Iran, okay, to attack the Persian Empire. Okay, so that was the westward expansion of the goat. That was the westward expansion of Alexander's empire. He crossed the surface of the entire earth. Okay, now we know that that's kind of the known earth, or the area that was known to Israel. Obviously, he didn't cross the whole planet. It's figurative in that sense, but does it have a more complete fulfillment? All right, the goat is pictured without touching the ground, as if the goat is flying. We know that Alexander didn't have airplanes in that time, 2,500 years ago, okay? But it's metaphorical, or it's symbolic in talking about how fast he could move his troops, okay? But don't you see that recently we exactly filled this prophecy in a way it could not have been fulfilled until the last maybe 50 years, maybe not even then, that we could actually take our B-2 bombers all the way across the earth without touching the ground and bomb the ram, which is Iran or Persia. It perfectly fulfills the scripture, okay? Now, the notable horn represented Alexander the Great. So there must be a notable horn for this goat as well. Now, is Mr. Trump compared with a goat? Remember, it was a goat that attacked the ram? Well, this is a post from his son, Donald J. Trump Jr., Instagram post. It shows Mr. Trump looking in the mirror and seeing a goat. Now, we know the meaning of this. He's talking about the greatest of all time, right? But in the Bible, goat has a totally different meaning, doesn't it? The goats are those on the left, okay? They're pictured as the ones who have rejected the Lord. Here's another mention of Mr. Trump as being the goat, greatest of all time. And here's a goat idol or sculpture that was actually found at Mar-a-Lago. They bought it for charity's sake, and then it was auctioned off. Now look at that goat carefully. Okay, he was golden, but he's been covered in something. Can you see what he's covered in? They're fake $100 bills. Okay, see the fake $100 bills? Now look what they say. In Trump we trust. That's in place of God, y'all. Does that not bother anybody? That's idolatry, plastered over the golden goat idol, which of course symbolically represents Mr. Trump. They dared to put his name plastered over the name of God. How dare they do that? Once more, blasphemy. Okay, but we see the fulfillment. Okay, now, Revelation 13 talks about the beast. It says he'll be like a leopard. He'll have the feet of a bear and the mouth of a lion. So the beast will possess the characteristics of the leopard, the bear, and the lion. Well, who are the leopard, bear, and lion? Well, back to Daniel chapter 7, there were 3 kingdoms that came before the 4th kingdom, the lion, and had eagle's wings, a bear, and a leopard. And then finally, a 4th beast, which we usually think to be the Roman Empire, and then its final fulfillment in the beast system of Revelation. Okay, but the first 3 beasts, who were they? Well, the first 3 beasts described in Daniel, and by the way, that's not 17:7. That wouldn't be right. It might be 7:17. The first kingdom and king represented by the lion is Babylon under the king Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, so the lion, Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon. The second kingdom and king was Persia under Cyrus the Great, the bear. And the third kingdom is represented by Greece and Alexander the Great. That's the leopard. Okay, so we see the leopard, the bear, and the lion in Revelation, and then again in Daniel. Okay, and then the 4th terrible beast is the Roman Empire and its end-time fulfillment in the 10-horned beast kingdom. Okay, I don't know if you can see that very clearly, but you have Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon, Cyrus in Persia, Alexander the Great in Greece, and the little horn, the end-time ruler, and the final Roman Empire, which is Rome. Okay, remember there were 3 kings, Nebuchadnezzar, Cyrus, and Alexander the Great, and then there's a 4th king. This is another digital trading card. You see how that the president is showing us exactly who he is? He is the fourth king, the fourth and final king. He's showing us this with this digital trading card. Does that mean he knows who he is? Maybe, or somebody knows, or he's being satanically inspired to put these things out. I don't know which one it is, but he's showing us exactly who he is, everybody. Does he have the mouth of a lion from Revelation 13:2? He posted this on social media. He put it out, showing himself the mouth of a lion. Here's another representation of himself with a roaring lion. Now, there's two roaring lions. There's the Lion of Judah, but also there's the other roaring lion, right? Who seems to be having his paw there on North America. Now, talked about him being like Nebuchadnezzar. Well, Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon. Where is Babylon located? Well, the only township of any significance in the United States called Babylon is on Long Island in New York Harbor. And reportedly, at one time, there was a water tower that incoming freighters could see, and it said, "Welcome to Babylon." Did Mr. Trump declare himself as king of Babylon? New York, by the way, New York is the modern day fulfillment of Babylon. I would say yes, he did. Has he made a statue? Had a video with a statue of himself like King Nebuchadnezzar? Yes. Is he Nebuchadnezzar? Were they both removed from power? Yes. Was Nebuchadnezzar arrogant and hardened with pride like Mr. Trump? Yes. So Nebuchadnezzar and Trump both lost power and returned to power. So is he a fulfillment of Nebuchadnezzar? Yes. Is he a fulfillment of King Cyrus the bear? Yes. We see a comparison to Cyrus. Again, here's another one here from Messianic Prophecy Bible Project where he's compared to Cyrus. Here's another article where he's compared to Cyrus. And there's that coin I showed you earlier where he's compared to Cyrus. So he said he charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem. So we see the comparison to Cyrus. Okay, and then this billboard, he's compared to Cyrus again, isn't he? All right, now I talked about Alexander the Great. Did he fulfill the scripture that foreshadowed by Alexander the Great in Daniel chapter 8? Yes, he did. So is he like Alexander the Great? Yes. This is from an ad in Australia for Pizza Hut in Australia, where Mr. Trump in the advertisement is comparing himself to Napoleon and Alexander the Great. And finally, from the Jerusalem Post just a couple weeks ago, President Trump is the Alexander the Great of our time. So in conclusion to this section, Donald Trump fulfills Revelation 13. He's like the lion, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. They both lost power and came back to power. Each has a golden image of themselves. He's like King Cyrus of Persia, a Messiah to the Jews that allowed them to rebuild the temple. And he's like Alexander the Great that comes from the west to attack Iran and to save Israel. So, as you can see, he has the attributes of the lion, the bear, and the leopard. He fulfills these three kings. He is the fourth king, fulfilling the scriptures. He is the end-time man of sin, and I urge you to flee from him and put all of your faith and all of your hope only in Jesus Christ and what he did for you at Calvary. Thank you for listening.